A five-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court of India, led by Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud, is hearing perhaps one of the most important cases of judicial history. It has already been 14 days since the bench is hearing the case. A batch of petitions challenging the constitutional validity of abrogation of Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. The abrogation, which resulted Jammu and Kashmir to come under central government rule and the state becoming a union territory. Today, we are going to discuss 5 major points which were argued by the petitioners in the Supreme Court of India today and break down the most important points by the petitioners in the case. The first argument is Article 370 became permanent after the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir ceased to exist. Well, Clause 3 of Article 370 states that the said article or Article 370 can be repealed only on the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. This particular body dissolved in 1957, and thus the petitioners contend that Article 370 became permanent after this. Secondly, the petitioners contend that Article 370 was repealed by a roundabout way by first amending Article 368 of the Indian Constitution, whereby the words Constituent Assembly were substituted by Legislative Assembly. This was done because Constituent Assembly, which had the power to repeal Article 370, had dissolved way back in 1957. So, the petitioners contend that this act of amending Article 368 was a colorable exercise of power. Even otherwise, on August 7, 2019, when this entire act happened, at that point of time, Jammu and Kashmir was under the President's rule, and the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir was not in session. Thus, the entire act of abrogation that happened was by the power of Parliament. Now, the petitioners here contend that the entire act of repealing Article 370 can only be done by the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir and not by the central government or the Parliament. Next, the petitioners contended that when the President of India has issued a proclamation suspending the erstwhile State Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir, there are implied restrictions under Article 370 Clause 3 which provides for the repeal of Article 370. This is because the petitioners argued that a legislative assembly cannot be converted into a constituent assembly because the intent of the legislature can be partisan, but that is not the case with a constituent assembly. Next, the petitioners have argued that the central government's powers under Article 3 of the Indian Constitution, which deals with creation of new states, altering the boundaries of the existing states, creating names for states, etc., cannot be used by the central government or the Parliament to convert the status of Jammu and Kashmir from being a state to that of a union territory. Well, the petitioners have argued that to change the boundaries of a state, the Constitution requires the views of that particular state to be taken into account. It has also been argued that the existence of states is a part of the basic structure doctrine and that Jammu and Kashmir cannot be an exception to this. Lastly, the petitioners have argued that if the government of India wanted to really integrate Jammu and Kashmir completely into the Union of India, then a merger agreement should have been signed with Jammu and Kashmir like it was done with other princely states. The petitioners have submitted that no such merger agreements were signed in this particular case and that the state had acquired constitutional autonomy. It has also been argued that the Muslim majority population of Jammu and Kashmir had chosen to be with India under the constitutional promise of Article 370. Well, these were the petitioners' brief arguments before the Supreme Court of India. Bar and bench team will be back after the Government of India concludes its submissions before the Supreme Court to summarize what the central government has put forth in this case. Stay tuned.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon.